I've been having some debates recently about Christianity, and it's got me thinking about why was the Old Testament God so aggressive, so violent? There are so many instances in the Old Testament which indicate his violence. One is in number 1 Samuel 15:3, where God orders that all the men, women, children, even infants, and even donkeys, camels, goats, etc., should be destroyed, killed. And he's also a jealous God who's very anti any other gods and punishes people for worshipping other gods. In Exodus 25, he says, "You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me." And then there's the way he treated Job, which was basically torturing him because of a debate or competition with the devil. And I can fully understand why early Christians, such as Marcion and the Gnostics, did not accept the Old Testament and considered the Old Testament God to be evil. In their theology, he was a tyrannical demiurge who created our world, but was himself cut off from the divine realm, and therefore a deluded tyrant. In some versions, he was the son of Sophia, who was one of the divine beings who had separated herself and produced on her own rather than with her divine partner, her divine consort. And because of this imbalance, not having the balance of the male and female powers, she created something that was not quite right. And they called him Yaldabaoth, amongst other things. And Yaldabaoth was the evil god of our world, who was separated from the divine realm. And the Gnostics believed that Jesus came from a higher realm, from the real divine realm, from beyond the god or the evil tyrant god of our world. Of course, as a pagan, I have a somewhat different theology. And that's got me thinking about why exactly Yahweh was so awful in the OT from a pagan perspective. The fact is that Yahweh was originally a tribal war god, much like Ares in the ancient Greek religion. Yahweh's father was El, and his mother was Asherah, who later became his wife, though Anat was another goddess who was also considered his wife in some areas and at some times. Anyway, Yahweh was originally part of a pantheon of gods, not the only god. And this is reflected in the Bible that the Old Testament often refers to the divine as we or they, rather than just as one. For example, in Genesis, it says, "And we created them, male and female, in our image." This suggests not only that there was more than one god, but that there were goddesses as well, that the divine consisted of both gods and goddesses. Anyway, the point is that Yahweh was originally part of a pantheon of gods, not the only god. Every polytheistic pantheon has a war god. And war gods tend to be aggressive, because that's what war is all about. But the aggressive nature of the war gods is generally tempered by the other gods in the pantheon. And a war god is often partnered with a goddess of love. For example, in the ancient Greek pantheon, Ares, the god of war, is partnered with Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and she calms and harmonizes his aggressive nature. And Yahweh was originally harmonized and calmed by Asherah. But what happens when a group of people ban all the other gods and just focus on the war god? The war god's power is allowed to go rampant and unchecked. And this is the Yahweh of the Old Testament. A violent, rampant war god whose power is unchecked by the goddess of love or all the other gods who were originally in the pantheon. And this is why, as polytheists, we feel that it is important to worship all the gods of a pantheon, because they bring balance and harmony. Ares in the Greek pantheon helps us to give us strength and to fight our battles. But we also need the calming and harmonizing power of Aphrodite, as well as the wisdom of Athena and the powers of all the other gods.